It happened.
Thanks too. Yeah.
So in the interest of being on time, I'm going to start off our little meeting. And I'm going to ask my illustrious colleagues here at the panel to introduce themselves and give us a very brief background, since we're all in the brochure in graphic detail. Let's start with Stephen.
All right, thank you. Get close to the microphone. Hope you can all hear me. My name is Stephen McDonald. I'm the managing director with a relatively young angel group, the Biomed Investor Network. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia. We're only about 2 years old. It started out of an initiative out of Georgia Bio, the state's Biotech Industry Association. And I've been in this role actually only for about 7 months. I have a 15-year career as a patent agent, so that brings a lot of strong IP experience into this role, and I've been mentoring small companies through Southeast Bio, the state's, or the region's Biotech Investor Forum for about 5 years now.
Can everybody hear? Can you hear in the back?
Great.
Good deal.
Thank you, Stephen. My name is Wei Tao. I'm from Sand Hill Angels, which is a Silicon Valley-based angel groups. And we are a little bit big, 150 members or so. Started around 2000 and investing not only in life science, but also all other aspects of Silicon Valley high techs. For life science, we have about half of the membership actually very much interested in that. We invest in medtech, we invest in biotech, and have a very strong following. And for the biotech type of deal, if you know, we have a very good story, good traction, sometimes the size of our check can rival a small VC.
My name is Bernie Rubnick. I'm the moderator today, and I'm one of the founders of Mid-Atlantic Bio Angels. We're centered in New York City, although we have no geographic preference. Our largest investment happens to be in the UK. So essentially, we invest in things that frighten most people, therapeutics especially. And we've now made a number of therapeutic investments. I think we're up to 6 investments in 4 years. Not a lot of investments, but we've invested $11 million. Our group consists of mostly C-level executives from pharma, either retired, have done startups, and come back to us.
I'm John Chi. I'm with Bio-Pacific Investors. We're based out of Sacramento, but we don't have a geographic preference. One of our focuses is to bring our investments to help commercialize in China as well. And let's see, we started in 2013. I'm the head of the screening committee, and we do deals pretty much across the board in life sciences. We've got some therapeutics, diagnostic devices, health IT, and we've got about 11 deals out right now, about 5 million in deals, and we're always looking for something good.
So good morning, my name is Mike O'Donnell. I'm a member of Life Science Angels. We're from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm on the Biotherapeutics Screening Committee. I've been involved for about 7 years, and the group goes back to about 2000. So we have about 125 members, diverse backgrounds, CEOs, CFOs, accountants, attorneys, scientists, VCs. We think that diversity of our members is one of our real advantages in terms of helping with due diligence and deal referrals. So we typically invest up to about $2 million. We prefer $5 million or under pre-money valuations, and we'd like to be the first money in. That's my night job. My day job is I'm a corporate partner in Morrison & Foster, where I specialize in helping people start medical device and biopharmaceutical companies, help them raise venture capital, and help them grow up and take them public or do their M&A exits.
So I'm going to pose some questions to the panel in terms of how each of them think about how they want to impart knowledge to you about how to think like and feel like an investor. You know, that it was an old saying, you know, you want somebody to give you money, dress like a banker. It doesn't apply anymore to investment. I generally wear jeans and a t-shirt, but notwithstanding that, what do we think about first? So, Stephen, why don't you start that off?
Okay. Going into a little more detail about Biomed, Technologically, we're kind of restricted to health innovation, so it includes biotech, therapeutics, all medical devices, and digital health IT to a certain degree. We generally stay away from that last discipline because there's enough other technology groups in Atlanta. But what we look for is again, quote, the good deals. So something that has the potential where it's has a broad market, it has great growth potential. Our members are again, we're not as large as your group way. We're about 50 members right now. We're growing, but the skill set of our members is pretty high. So we have folks with a VC background. We have CEOs from some of the local Georgia companies who've exited and stayed in the state to invest. We have physicians. We have some folks in the high net worth philanthropic community in Atlanta. So old money buckhead, I think, is when we describe that. Yeah, so we look at the gamut across the board. We're geographically agnostic, so we look at technologies. We like to stay within the United States, but certainly stuff close to home is a little more appealing to the members of our group because they'd like to stay involved too. But we look for innovative technologies. I think the folks in the group like stuff that's a little more technically complex. So this kind of goes to Bernie. I think there's a certain element of interest in our group. We don't necessarily flock to the therapeutics with the complex mechanisms and long timelines, but I think there's certainly that element of it that resonates with our members. But if someone was approaching us, I would say we're looking for folks that kind of have their ducks in a row. Again, I mentioned we're a young group, so as far as getting into a lot of the detail and the diligence and stuff like that, the crisper the story is coming from the entrepreneur and the team, then that certainly makes it more attractive to us as a group.
Thank you, Stephen. So from San Diego Angels perspective, we look at a few things. First of all, unmet medical needs. This is a big thing. Whatever you do has to address a real unmet medical needs. And along the same line, we prefer companies have strong intellectual property protections. So whatever you do, you need to have a competitive edge, either against your present competitor and or future competitors as well. Beyond that, then valuation is important because we have early stage companies. We want to have our check have a meaningful impact. So if you're a little bit too further along, that might be beyond our range. The thing I haven't mentioned it, actually is the most important, is the entrepreneur, the team. We need people to show passionate, to show commitment to whatever they plan to do. Startups, roller coaster rides. It will be up and downs. You need to have a team have the commitment to put it through during those downturns. And as investors, we are committed as your value-add partners, but it goes both ways. The entrepreneur has to commit to their ideas as well.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself as an investor because I'm a founder of one angel group and I'm in 4. So for all intents and purposes, for me, since I'm a junior scientist, and I'm okay with the science, but I'm a junior scientist, I look at the entrepreneur. The old cliche, bet on the jockey, not on the horse. I've been highly successful with that, with 3 exits in the last 12 months, programmed exits. And we generally, as an angel group, do the same thing, but we dive very deep into the science because most of our members are MDs, MD PhDs. We have 2 MD JDs that do intellectual property, but it's an alphabet soup group. And we look very carefully at intellectual property. I didn't want to get that deep into the description of the group just yet because I have a number of questions that cover that. We'll look at what we prefer in terms of valuations. In other words, bracket those valuations to certain levels that beyond there, it doesn't make sense for angel investors because the deal is going to require far too much capital for an angel to see an exit. We look for, generally, at least my group, and I see some nodding heads, we look for companies that are looking to do a trade sale or exit relatively quickly. Now, there seems to be a disconnect between early stage and early exit. In between the beginning of 2015 and now, I'll use oncology as an example, there were 17 transactions, full licensing transactions, acquisitions. The average money up front, because our market has changed for discovery stage companies, was in the order of about $50 million. And the average milestones totaled about $1 billion. A little more upfront for preclinical stage companies that have done at least their IND enabling studies. A little less on the back end, about $700 million, but larger royalty percentages generally in those deals. I have the database and the list and go through these on a regular basis. You might ask yourself, does that reflect on angel valuations today? Generally it does not, because the risk profile of a therapeutic investment is exceptionally high. And even though something may look very good up front, we'll take the risk if there's a large enough upside opportunity and get in quite early. Quite early means that most of the groups are looking for valuations of 5 million or less. We'll stretch to the area of 10 million in therapeutics if we see something very, very good, or if there's a material transfer agreement with a pharma or a strategic relationship in place. That's the nature of what we do.
Thanks, Bernie. On a philosophical side, maybe like if we look at the kinds of deals that we want, it's thinking from the side of the entrepreneur, bring something that has, as Wei said, a huge need, something that's going to affect the lives of people, and really, I think that's a lot of why we're in the life sciences. It's not the easiest way to get an exit, but you want to find something that's got a good need, solid IP. So back to that jockey or the horse analogy, I mean, there's a lot of good horses out there. We want to see a good horse where the technology is solid, that, and it can be early, preclinical, or any stage down the line as well. But bring us something that's got a lot of potential, and then lots of good horses. Then we look at the team, and the team is arguably more important than the horse, because they're going to be taking it to the finish line. And so then we really want to know, who are the entrepreneurs, what is it that drives them, and can they see it through, because there's going to be a lot happening that's going to try to pull them apart, and we need to know that they're going to survive and be able to bring us that return.
So rather than talk about exactly what kind of companies we're looking for or what our process is, which I'm happy to talk about later, I thought it would be interesting to talk about sort of what do you need to do to get a meeting with someone, right? Because that ultimately you want a meeting with an investor. And obviously the most important part of that is your executive summary. And I think it's important to think, an executive summary really is a summary of a business plan. So what you should be presenting is a plan for your business. And my biggest frustration, I've been doing this 30 years, I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of business plans, is that in a typical 10-page document, someone will spend 8 pages saying what a big problem cancer is, or what a big problem Alzheimer's is, and then 1/2 a page on what their technology is, and 1/2 a page on what the teams. Well, you don't need to spend 8 pages telling me what a big problem. I know those markets are big. What I want is 1/2 a page on that, and 8 pages on what your particular technology is, how you're going to solve the problem, how much money you need to do it, where you're going to be when that money runs out, what your team has done. All those kind of things are what I want to be addressed. And in terms of format, I mean, a lot of people like PowerPoint slide presentations. I personally think they're great if you're actually presenting to someone, but I personally find them a little bit frustrating because usually they leave more questions unanswered. So I prefer actual textual things where you actually are describing your business, in sort of page-by-page format. And so, so description of technology, description of how you're going to do it, what makes you unique, what your IP position is, and then on your team, I like to know fairly detailed information about the people. And former head of something at some unnamed company is not very helpful. I mean, we check references, we like to know exactly who you worked for and what you did. And to the point of betting on, riders rather than horses, we strongly agree with that. So what do you do if you're a first-time, CEO, you're a scientist or something? Well, get someone to help you. See if you can get someone on your, and board of advisors is nice, but that may mean nothing. If someone's on your board of directors, that means they're committed. If they're going to be your chairman of the board, that means someone's really going to work with you. So if you can find an experienced former CEO or someone who's done this before to be part of your team, that significantly enhances the chances that I'll want to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah, we look at a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, and that's the company they've assembled, the folks that are willing to work with them and put time in, tells a tremendous story about their ability to carry something forward, their leadership skills, their ability to convince others to support them in growing the company. It's an interesting dynamic.
On that point too, I mean, in fact, one of our members told me a couple months ago, Stephen, I'd rather see a B-level company with an A-level team than vice versa. And so that was interesting. In Georgia, there's a lot of universities, and so there's a lot of startups coming out of the universities, and we see scientific founders being the CEOs, and the meetings we have with them are very telling, because sometimes you can just see how emotionally invested they are in the technology, and it's great to see that passion and enthusiasm, but it's sometimes a red flag, because we're like, are you going to be able to let it go when the company grows? Are you going to be able to let it go and pass it off to a CEO who can take it to that next when you pass the baton? Or are you going to cling to it and not let someone get in?
Well, even more so. There's a description of kinds of companies, and this is into a later discussion of red flags.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at a company and you interview the CEO, and he wants to grow something of substance over a lengthy period of time, it may not be an angel deal. I've got personally 60 private investments, 61 actually, private investments. I would classify 40% of them as the Walking Dead. The Walking Dead are companies where the CEO has been wildly successful for the first couple of years, taken a nice salary and benefits, build a team, and the company is making money. So in effect, there's not much arm waving or yelling we can do as a board, but there's no burning desire to sell the company. It's turned into a lifestyle business. Even if your intent is to sell a company in 7 years, say it. Tell us specifically as angels what your exit plans are, and very specifically, who you might exit to and why there's a fit there. Those are the kinds of things that in the initial interview. But getting back to the question, how do you get into an angel group? Most of us have a process. We have websites, we have screening committees. The screening committees go through deals, and we have interns at MABA. 4 of them, 3 of them are postdocs, and one's an MBA. And we get through, they're the first layer. Then we have a screening committee, which consists of about 15 of our 50 members. And that's an interesting discussion, because if there's an advocate in that screening committee, if there's someone on that committee that wants to see a deal, we bring it in. In deference to the talent and the dedication of the people on that committee, we bring it in. So the message is, within an angel group, find yourself an advocate. Find somebody that's willing to listen, that likes what you've said, and refers you to their group. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We used to, in years past, be much more informal. We sort of only had an advocate system. Now we have a website, on Proceed or whatever, you can go in, there's a formal application process. But I will tell you, if you don't have a champion, it's very difficult to navigate through that process.
Yeah, we've got about 50 or 60 members, and most of them have domain expertise in something and in some area, and so when a deal comes in, it goes to them, But a lot of our members are CEOs and active, and so there are a lot of referrals of deals coming in. So that's.
Yeah, I echo the comments that the previous couple guys brought up. In Sand Hill Angels, for each of the areas we invest, we have a so-called special interest group. So life science have a SIG, and every month we review probably a dozen or so deals. And I completely agree. If you have an internal advocate for you, your chance being promoted through those screening processes significantly enhanced. But on the other hand, it's not a requirement because oftentimes if you have a really good story, really good traction, it will speak for itself. So have an advocate for you definitely helps. No question about it.
And I guess the other question that begs, do you, as groups in general, do you try to syndicate your deals?
Absolutely. In fact, some of the, of the few companies that we've managed to fund in the time that we've been in existence, I want to say at least four of them have come in as syndications from other groups where, everything was all the ducks were in a row. They were willing to even share some diligence, and it just kind of made the process flow a lot smoother for our group and sign on board. So definitely. And then also we've been developing some relationships with other angel groups so that as we're seeing technologies for the first time and going in, if there's not sufficient interest in our network of individuals, we can approach some of the other groups and see if they want to help us finish the round.
Yeah, definitely. We syndicate deal with our partner groups, especially other groups in the Bay Area, Life Science Angels, Band of Angels, Angel Forums, Congressional Forums, all those groups. If we see good deals, we typically, trying to solicit interest from them as well. So as regarding syndication, the other important factor is that typically a single angel groups, even as large as Sand Hill Angels, it's difficult to put up all the money that required for the round. So it helps that we have good relationships with our partner groups that we can together put together a bigger check. And often in those cases, we prefer to lead, set the terms, and write up high-quality, detailed memos, which helps the syndication process a lot. But on the flip side, that also requires the entrepreneur to help along to disclose a lot of the information to help us to come up with the memo that is one is clearly understandable, two is actually really dive deep into the company, technologies, finances, IPs, all those kind of things, teams, so that we can bring along the syndication process smoothly. Because it is doable, but it takes a lot of energy and trying to coordinate different groups.
So the old saying amongst angel investors, and I'm an old angel investor, I'll qualify that. I've been investing for 40 years. After my third exit, I started to invest capital before I knew about angel groups. So, for all intents and purposes, we don't want to put our money in a black hole. So the groups that recognize that will outbound as many deals as they can to credible groups that might invest alongside of them. It really is a very practical matter. It's a selfish matter. If we get all excited about something, we better make sure we get other people excited about it as well. So you have an advocate in an angel group once they've invested.
Yeah, we absolutely syndicate. Sometimes it's the size of the check, and sometimes it's a good deal. We want other people, and yeah, absolutely.
So I'd say for us, it totally depends upon the size of the deal and the location of the deal. So we're San Francisco Bay Area based, and one of the things we like is whoever your LSA contact is to be local to where the company is. And we like to have a board seat or a board observer. We think we're more than just, you know, a check. We're actually going to help build your company with you. So I'd say we're comfortable, $500,000, $750,000 is our typical deal size. If it gets to be more money than that, then we probably will be looking to syndicate with someone. Similarly, if it's somewhere outside the Bay Area where we don't have a contact number, then we like a strong local angel group to syndicate with us, so we have some local presence there.
And so, you know, we're getting into the criteria that we look at as individual angel groups. We touched on red flags, we touched on some general topics, but typically, what do we look for? And I'll give you just a general assessment of everything we're looking for. We cover the IP. That's a gating factor very often in regard to opinions about it because you can't sell your company to a pharmaceutical company or have a successful exit to the public market unless your IP is quite strong. We cover, and we will invest. We've invested in one company. I hadn't filed their patents yet, but we had the opportunity under NDA to look at what they were filing. We were very pleased with that. So we look at the cohesiveness and the completeness of the team. Your small molecule company, do you have somebody doing CMC? I mean, have you gotten that far? Those are all components that you're going to need. Your biologics company, and you're making DNA. Well, how are you going to do that? And who are you going to use? And how many grams per liter can they produce? And is this economically feasible? Does it make sense? Right? You look at those things. We look at all previous investment. So we want to know who invested, when they invested, and how long you've been raising money. If I look at a company that's 14 years old, and I just looked at one, that comes looking for money and says we're at an inflection point, my question is, well, what happened 10 years ago and 7 years ago? Weren't there inflection points then? So you know, it's the old house on the market syndrome. So we look at all of those general conditions in gating a deal. And then we work back from market size to look at what the potential exit may be. And we calculate in our brains a multiple, which rarely holds true, but nonetheless, we look at that. We look very much the way at a deal a venture capital firm would. Not a typical angel firm, but our terms are easier. There's no board seat requirement, although generally we take a board seat because of the level of the people involved in the group. Most companies like to have that kind of representation. And some of us are passive and some are active. Sadly, I'm active in virtually every company I have invested in since the beginning of time. So and my MO sort of goes like this. I join the board or take an active operating role in the company for a couple of years. Hopefully it grows up in that period of time and I move on to another. So there can be 3 or 4 companies I'm active with at any given time. And that's an unusual form of investment. I will tell you, within my group, virtually everyone else is passive. But I've invested more than everybody in the group, so I want to watch my money a little more closely.
So I would say, so one of the biggest things I personally look for, I think is one of sort of the most underserved aspects is angel investors by nature take a lot of what I call financing risk. In other words, venture capitalists, you know, they typically syndicate, they have a lot of money, they're used to doing several rounds. For me personally, I like to write one check and then be done. I don't want to have to keep writing checks along the way. So a really important thing for me is, okay, how much money are you raising? Let's say $750,000. What are you going to have when that money runs out? Because I want to know with a very high degree of certainty that you're going to have enough success, however you define that, that you're now going to be able to raise a venture round, do a corporate partner round. In the ideal world, get acquired, that rarely happens, but I want to know for sure that I'm not going to be the one having to write that next check. So you got to tell me how much, and this is your job, and I call this financial engineering, figure out how much money you need to get to that value inflection point that will then let you raise more money or do the next exciting thing. And maybe that's $750,000, maybe that's $3 million. But whatever that number is, that's the number you gotta raise. So if you need $3 million, don't come to me and ask for $750. Then we know we got a syndicated deal, and be sure to get $3 million lined up before you cash anyone's check.
Yeah, my favorite slide in a presentation are auctionable milestones, and I like to see little dollar values at each and the amount of investment underneath it took to get to each, because then as investors, we're looking for return on investment. And if you dive down into the weeds on the science, some of us will be able to get through that, others will not. And we want to know, because we're going to vet that in the due diligence process. We want to know if we put $1 in, how many dollars we're going to get out and when. And we want to know that even though you need a lot more money, that future rounds will be up rounds because you will have achieved these milestones one after the other. So that's essentially saying the same thing in a different way. And, that brings me back to the red flags. When early money is the toughest to get. It really, truly is. Once you've broken that ice, it becomes easier. So you always ask for the amount of money you're going to need to hit an inflection point of some kind. If you run out of runway before you get there, raising that next round is going to be remarkably difficult and likely a down round.
Yep.
And that's a red flag. So, the other red flag is I was on a board once where 3 of the other board members had the same last name. It was absolute chaos when the infighting occurred within the family that was involved in this. So I generally don't like to invest behind people that are closely associated outside of work and or who bring in their significant others.
Yeah, I mean, every company that I've been involved with, there's been probably 4 or 5 over the years that have had a husband and wife team, has not worked out.
I just want to follow up on another point of financing. As previously mentioned, we'd like you to raise enough money to get to the next inflection point, and we'd like to have a sort of at least believable roadmap to exit and the amount of cash required to get there. And the other aspect of it is that typically, the exit path is merger and acquisition. And so for the early stage company, especially those companies involved in areas that bigger companies, strategics are interested, we want to entrepreneurs have early conversations with your potential partners or acquisitors down the future to have a conversation to gauge their interest and if they can participate early on either as partner deals or have a equity investment in early stage companies, that's always a big plus for us. Not only reduce the financing risks, which usually is one of the biggest risks, but also give us confidence that at the end there's a positive partners that's waiting at the other end of the exit line.
So there's a distinction between passion and arm waving. We're talking about red flags. Passion is wonderful. If you really believe in your product and you're passionate about the development of a small molecule, a biologic, a diagnostic, whatever it may be, essentially that counts for a lot. We like to see that passion. If you're not believable, because you're living in your own reality distortion field. That was in the Steve Jobs book. I like that. Right? If you're living in your own reality distortion field, we can see that. Investors know that. We've been through that a million times. So make sure, and we're gonna open it to questions, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Let's make sure that everything you say matches everything in your documentation. Because where things come apart there and we lose trust, that's the #1 element. You've got to build our trust for us to part with our money.
Can I just follow up on that briefly? So it's just a couple examples of that. So in your business plan, if there's some big issue that you don't address, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's IP, you just don't have it in there, that's a red flag. I mean, you gotta address it. It's okay to say, this is a problem, we don't know how to solve it yet, but you gotta acknowledge the problem. The other thing I would stress is do your homework. I've actually been in the screening committee where as a company presenting, one of my co-members got his computer, said to the person, do you know there's a direct competitor out there that just raised $20 million? And they didn't know about it. I mean, that's not excusable. In one of our meetings just recently, we had a company presenting before a 100-member group with a controlled substance they were going to manufacture through plants for pain relief. And they had a big slide that said, this is not a controlled substance, with a little footnote that said, oh, we have not talked to an attorney about this yet. So one of the attorneys in the group said, that is a controlled substance, you can't do that. Okay, that presentation did not go well. So you gotta do your homework, you gotta anticipate questions and either know the answer or know you gotta get the answer, otherwise huge red flag for us.
Hey Bernie, can I comment on one more thing?
We've talked.
Okay. Before you go open up to questions, you mentioned IP, right? And of course, in a early stage company, you have no assets except your IP, and it shocks me sometimes how little some of the people I talk to realize that. And coming from an IP background as well, the lack of awareness or the lack of appreciation for exactly what IP is, and people just inherently go to patents because that seems to be sexy and popular. But there's trade secrets, there's just data exclusivity. There's a lot of other ways to create barriers to entry around the company's intellectual property. But the CEO should know some fundamentals of IP. And I saw a slide where they had no data on their patent portfolio, but then at the bottom they just had a bullet point that said, oh, and we have freedom to operate worldwide. And I'm thinking, okay, well that would have cost you about $200,000 to have an attorney do that analysis, which I'm sure you haven't done. So it made me lose credibility, or made them lose credibility, made me lose trust. And so also when they talk about, oh, well, we have all of these patents, whether those issued patents or those pending patent applications. And then I've had people show a slide with an entire list of serial numbers, filing dates. Some of the patent applications were expired. At the end of the day, as someone walking into this looking at a patent portfolio, I want to know if you have patents filed, are they commercial? Will they cover your commercial product that you're looking at commercializing? And frankly, how long your patent term is. I don't care when you filed it, right? Give me 20 years from that filing date and say we have patents that will extend to 2032 or 2035. I looked at a company last month and they had, everything was all, I's dotted, T's crossed, they had a lot of buying. We had an advocate in our group, and when I looked at their patent portfolio, they had 3 years of patent term left, and they hadn't even gotten approval. So the value would disappear at that point.
So we have to move on to questions and answers, but I'll tell you one story because it relates to doing your homework. And that's the biggest red flag, someone that hasn't done their homework. Know what drugs are out there and how much market share they have. Know the market share they have. I invested a number of years ago in a company called Cardiacon. Better drug, hypernutremic for the patients with congestive heart failure. It was a fabulous drug. It got all the way through, with a partner, all the way through phase 3 and to an NDA. It didn't fail, but it brought 50 cents on dollars invested because Otsuka had a drug that didn't have the same quality of labeling. It was only for inpatients, was less effective, cost a bit less, big factor in today's market, and they had a 70% market share. Pfizer, who was the partner, and Biotech, they dropped out. They dropped out when they got through that final study, never purchased the drug, but they supported the development of the drug. It was finally sold to a private equity firm for $50 million after 110 had been raised. So you've got to look at those dynamics, the market dynamics, and be prepared to address them when you speak with us. Questions?
I have a question. Do you guys invest as a group, or is it individual investors within your group that invest?
So that's a great question. I'll take a crack at that. So we actually set up a separate limited liability company behind the wall so that the company only has to deal with one investor, which is a big plus for the company. It costs us a little bit of money. Quite frankly, it's a pain in the butt, but that's the way we do it.
Yeah, we do it the same way. We've got an LLC where the money comes in and then you just get one check out.
Very good.
We do it a couple different ways. We have a fund that members are participated in. It's sort of a sidecar that can co-invest with the members as a fund. We do individual investments. We'll do an LLC if there are enough players that want to get into a deal.
Right. Typically, we do as LLC, but members are also free to invest on their own.
As an investor network, typically we facilitate the review of the deals, and then the investors invest individually. And so, there has been talk since I started about how it's probably not the most efficient way of doing it. You don't want to complicate the cap table too much with a bunch of names moving forward. So, in situations where there is a big group, the trend is to do exactly what the other gentleman said and create the LLC and go in that direction.
Questions? Yes?
Well, could you talk a little bit about how you think about dilution? So you had mentioned making sure that investors have a clear path forward. They know where the next capital is going to come from. They know how much that next tranche of capital is going to be to get them to the next value inflection point. But particularly in the world of therapeutics, where drug discovery and development is very expensive, what level of dilution are you typically expecting as a product moving forward, and there may be some exit down the road?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a good question. I mean, from my own standpoint, again, it comes down to, building value and hitting value creation milestones or whatever. So, and it's also a function of, whether this is going to be $1 billion product or a $100 million product, right? So obviously, we like to make money on our investment. And I typically, my hurdle was to basically double my money at the time of the first financing, which, by the way, is we're not a big fan of, convertible notes. I mean, on the company side, I love it. It's very easy to do. You don't have to argue about valuation. It's very cheap. From a legal perspective, it's great. But if I'm sitting here wearing my investor hat, and you're going to offer me a 25% discount, I want to double my money, right? That's not too exciting. Now, we sometimes do smaller deals with a convertible note with a cap, so at least we know we're not going to go over a certain valuation. But generally speaking, we like to price deals.
So if you're talking about doing an equity deal at that level, are you talking about common or preferred?
So we would always do preferred. I mean, there's a number of reasons you don't want to do common,
So
mainly because it screws up the valuation for your employees.
Why would I do it? Spend $20,000 or $25,000 in legal fees?
You probably wouldn't do this to raise at least $1 million.
For a $500,000 investment.
Yeah, yes, we probably wouldn't do that. We'd probably do in that case a C, but we'd probably be over $1 million before we want to do a price equity round.
Yeah.
But just to follow up on that line of thinking, what do you guys think about safe agreements?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just a convertible note. It's another word for a convertible note. I mean, it's not quote debt, so it doesn't really impact your balance sheet, but to me, it's the same thing.
We generally will not invest against a safe agreement because all the protective measures are in there for the company and not the investors.
West Coast, East Coast.
It all comes down to the details, so I mean.
West Coast, East Coast.
West Coast, East Coast.
I think even though we're West Coast, we're sort of not too much into safe either. We're with Bernie on that.
I mean, it's a practical matter. If I have a convertible note and the company's out of money, I mean, you're not going to get anything, right? And so,
Although, if there's a little left.
yeah.
So, see, you asked a question about dilution. I want to address that in a different way if I can. All right, so there's percentage dilution, which I fully expect and can live with. And there's economic dilution, which I hate. So if my stock is worth $1 now and it's worth $2 in 3 years, I'm a happy camper. Although I might have gone from 10% of the company to 2%. I still have 100,000 shares. I've doubled my money. That sounds like a dollar share, that's $200,000. I invest as if I'm operating a portfolio. I make lots of investments. I generally don't invest more than $500,000. I don't invest less than 50. And that's typical of me as an investor and most of the people in my group of angels, that particular group. But it's a function of, if I worried about percentage dilution, and entrepreneurs shouldn't worry about it, I've got 40%, I wanna at least maintain my 40% or 35%. If you do a good job and you increase the value of that stock, and you have X shares of stock, you ought to be looking at economic dilution only, not percentage dilution. Good investors never look at percentage dilution, they look at economic dilution.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, it should have been more clear. Of course, you're gonna get diluted, because every time the company issues more stock, you know, to raise more money, your percentage is gonna go down, unless you participate pro rata, which again is not usually what I like to do. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I like to put more bets on more companies at the early stages than to put, you know, continue to participate in each round going forward.
Yeah, I echo those points. We prefer price round, and we typically place a lot of emphasis on the share price rather than the percentage that we own. Like Mike pointed out, we usually have pro rata rights, but you know, depending on step up of valuation, sometimes we use some of it, but hardly use all of it.
Yeah, just to echo what Bernie was talking about, yes, dilution is gonna happen, but as long as you keep creating value, then that's great.
Guys, just while we're on that point, so we'll take another question. So representing the companies, I love the words pay to play, which means that only the investors who participate in the financing, particularly if it's a down round, sort of get the benefit of that. And sometimes even bad things happen to you if you don't participate. So that's a great thing from the company standpoint, because it encourages people to participate. From an angel investor perspective, I hate that, because I don't want to have to put in more money to prevent from getting washed out, so.
Question?
So how do you avoid cram downs? How do you avoid cram downs?
Build a successful company.
Yeah.
No, but seriously though, I mean, if your company's in trouble and, you know, the existing investors aren't willing to support it at the current price, you're gonna have a distressed financing.
Cram downs occur generally when entrepreneurs set their valuations too aggressively initially. And some of them are wonderful salespeople and will sell us that valuation. Invariably, when I've been sold a valuation, there's been a cram down. When we've figured a valuation based on market metrics, it hasn't happened. So essentially, it's being fair with the investors initially, because the earlier investors take the most risk.
Are there structural conditions in your agreements that help with,
Yeah.
ratchets?
So that's a good question. You can try to build in anything you want and all kinds of protections, but it's the golden rule. The guy that writes the last check is to set the rules. So whatever you have, they're gonna say, take that out or you ain't getting my money.
There was another question in the back.
Yeah, I have a question about early stage IP, where a lot of it is around know-how. So take our example, we're in discovery for a development candidate, but we haven't found it and patented it yet. How do you evaluate that type of situation? What are the hot buttons that get you excited in that kind of deal?
So I'll take a crack at that. So we're talking about sort of drug discovery or whatever, or tools. It's likelihood of success. I mean, that we look at the team, we say, okay, how long have you been looking? You know, what other molecules are out there? You know, how likely do we think it is that you'll find the needle in the haystack, so then you'll be able to get a patented compound?
I'll tap into that too. Just I know, you know, much like most angel groups, everyone's, you know, they want more of a de-risked opportunity, and so you know, we've been approached by some you know, startups that are in that drug discovery phase, and you know, our members generally want to shy away from them, and we kind of refer them to some of these you know, local development corporations, you know, within their state. So in Georgia, for example, we have the Georgia Research Alliance, which is an organization that, you know, deals with these you know, early stage organizations, and they will give some startup grants, you know, $100,000, $500,000. They'll do matching, really to get that candidate identified. And then when there's a candidate identified and filed on, I think that's more palatable to our members. You know, other angel groups may have a higher tolerance for that risk, but at least at Biomed, we like to get something that's a little more concrete to run with.
I'd like to thank our panel, and I'd like to thank the audience for participation today. I hope you got something out of this, and we'll all be around here, I guess, to talk to personally.